So as some of you know, I got to be in Yakima this week for a week of meeting with colleagues. It's kind of a mandatory meeting. It's not kind of, it's written in the Book of Discipline. Although, given the attendance, you wouldn't know that it's mandatory. It was a good meeting, but it was not an easy meeting. It was kind of heavy. We talked about the state of the denomination, and I thought I would give you a little bit of an update since I haven't in a while. The Judicial Council met in October, is meeting this week. They're still looking at some of the things that came out of last spring, including the penalty that somebody who practices a same-sex marriage or is in a same-sex marriage and they're clergy, they need to be, they need to be kicked out. They need to lose their job for a year without pay. Well, there's a problem with that because in Europe, that's not legal. You can't do that, even if you are the church. So can we apply one standard in Europe and a different standard in the U.S.? So the Judicial Council gets to sort that out. The other thing that's going on, a lot of people have been asking questions about, what about pastors' pensions? I know some of you have been worried about me. Westpath is the current name of the Board of Pensions. They are coming up with a plan to match any plan, any action General Conference takes. Because the Board of Pensions, their motto is, we care for those who serve. So no matter what decision the church makes, they're going to take care of us with our pensions. They will not decide what decision the church will take, nor will they advocate for one position or another, but they'll take care of the clergy. So you can stop worrying about that. Plans and petitions to the next General Conference, which is next May, had to be submitted by mid-September, and so those are all in. But all we can look at right now are summaries. And the reason is they have to be translated before they can be distributed. They have to be translated into all the languages that take place at General Conference. So we'll see those actual plans in February. And then the Judicial Council will look at those plans and say, okay, wait a minute, might as well stop right here. This is not allowed, this is not allowed. You know, they'll do that kind of work. What we do know from summaries is that there are ideas to do one church, a conservative church. There are ideas to do two churches, a conservative church and a progressive church, divisions into new denominations. Or three, the traditional and progressive, or centrist and progressive. And there's ideas to do four, traditional, centrist, progressive, and liberation, they call it. Not the same as libertine or whatever our political party is. It's more like liberation theology. So there are those kind of plans. What about our agencies? Well, all of the agencies, of which there must be 25 or 30, UMCOR being one of them, are establishing their own 50C plans so that they can stand independent of whatever the church decides to do. And then most likely what would happen is that any denomination that chooses could be in mission with those. Is that everything I wanted to tell you? I think that's... So the next thing that'll happen is in January, some of the prohibitions and the penalties that were passed last General Conference, last spring, will start taking place in January 1. And there is a great deal of fear among our colleagues because files can be charged again, or charges can be filed against any clergy who is LGBTQ or has done an LGBTQ wedding. So there's a great deal of fear that a whole bunch of people are going to be out of their jobs instantly. At the very least, those are charges, those are arrests that will have to be investigated before things can move on. So we dealt with that quite a bit at that meeting. That's why I said it wasn't an easy meeting. We had a wonderful keynote address, also not light, but wonderful, by a woman. Her name is Chitra Hanstad. She is an Eastern Indian woman. She works for Global Relief Seattle, and she talked to us about refugees and the kinds of things that refugee agencies can be doing. And she told us that the quota of refugees allowed into the United States, beginning fiscal year October 1, just 2 weeks ago, is now at 18,000. For the whole fiscal year, 18,000 refugees allowed into the U.S. That's fewer people than live in Port Orchard allowed in all of the U.S. The previous year, the refugees were allowed up to 30,000. The previous year is 45,000, but right now, they're basically saying don't bother coming. She also said that the federal money for refugees has been reduced to $1,500. This is to resettle your family in an apartment with furniture and dishes and your first load of groceries and getting your utilities hooked up. $1,500. Heavy, but she also told a lot of really good stories about places where she and her group have made a difference. We had good and helpful workshops. One of them was about storytelling. I enjoyed that one. That was kind of fun. We had another workshop that dealt with the competition between clergy colleagues and the isolation that we feel according to, in our competition with each other. I said to my conversation partner, his name is Daniel, I said, I think my colleagues think I am standoffish. And Daniel said, I know, right? Daniel said, I have heard that said about you. And then he very quickly said, I'm really quick to tell them that I find you very approachable. And we also heard a lot of colleague prayer requests. A retired colleague got remarried. A couple of colleagues celebrated birthdays. A colleague who has an advanced Parkinson's disease was actually able, he lives in Yakima, he was able to come to all 3 days of the meetings for a while. It was good to see him. A colleague who is Chinese is worrying about her husband. Her husband right now is visiting parents in China. Within hours of him getting off the plane, the police were at their door to interrogate him because they are Christians. A colleague has been recovering from a terrible automobile accident, and her recovery is not going fast enough. She can't wait to get back to church. A colleague who is my age, she sent a notice to us that her daughter, who are my children's age and who were in my Sunday school program when I was at the Port Orchard Church, one of her daughters has died. I don't even know which daughter or why. Heavy prayer requests. And then as I was driving home, I received a phone call from our Becky Blake. She had been at Sammy's Place, which is our tutoring program, on Wednesday afternoons. Cedra had come in from school all wound up. If you were here Wednesday, maybe you remember this. Cedra is our Syrian refugee student who's been with us like 3 years, so her sister now comes, but Cedra came in all wound up because her grandparents were missing. Her grandparents still live in Syria, and with all that bombardment of Turkish artillery, her grandparents were missing. But an update came while she was here. The grandparents were sound and safe, but they can't go home. And all this is happening because the Kurds were betrayed by the U.S. It's heart-rending. Cedra's family is already scattered across the globe. Some live in Norway, some live in Germany, others live here in the U.S. Some live still in Syria, others have already been killed. That's a lot of heavy stuff that came at me this week. It's enough to arrest anyone. Not arresting as in putting on handcuffs and pulling one off to jail, but arresting as in stopping one in your tracks to take stock. That kind of arrest. Arrest that causes one to examine one's own life, one's values, one's priorities, one's practices. Are they in alignment? And does that alignment lead to something good? Does that alignment lead to something God would celebrate, something that Jesus would appreciate and affirm? You know, if your goals are not in alignment with each other, you're not going to get where you plan to go. You'll never get there, or if you do, it'll take a long and detour route, risk getting lost to get there. I ran into this while I was in Yakima. GPS kept trying to tell me to go on this road. But somebody put a curb right down the middle of the road to keep people from going through there. I couldn't turn left, even as much as GPS told me. I was halted, I was arrested, I was not going to get where I was going that way. Arrested. It's what you do to ripening bananas when you put them in the refrigerator. Arrested. It's what I felt when Daniel reported that people perceived me as standoffish. You know, if people are going to talk about me, that's not what I want them to talk about. So I started thinking, rethinking, how can I change that perception? Arrested, it's what happens to children's learning and development when they contract illnesses and when they enter homelessness, when they become refugees, when they're removed from their parents at the border and locked in cages. You know, in 2019, an unprecedented 70.8 million people have been forced out of their homes worldwide. 37,000 daily are forced to flee because of conflict or persecution, and this is in 20 different countries. That speaker that we had in Yakima, she said many of these refugees will spend up to 17 years in a refugee camp, waiting and trying to be resettled or returned home. Our Kurdish friends, including Sidra, her family spent 2 years in Lebanon before they left, before coming to the United States in 2016. They're not allowed to visit their family in Norway or Germany or Syria. If they leave the U.S., they will never be permitted to return. You know, if you're a member of the privileged class of people, you rarely get arrested, at least for reasons of religion or the color of your skin or your ethnic group or some other majority group reason. Privileged group people, they get to do what they want with their lives. They get to live their lives as they choose, learning and playing and worshiping and dressing and living. You know, living is good. Not all minority people get to live. The man in our scripture story today, the man named Saul, he was a member of a privileged group. He was a Jew, true, which might often count against him in a Roman-controlled state. Jews were often considered thorns in the Roman sides. The Romans liked to run things their way, and the Jews didn't always cooperate. I mean, look how much trouble there was that, you know that one week when Passover happened, and that rebel preacher of theirs got arrested and executed? What a mess that week was. But this Saul, he was also a Roman citizen. He was well educated, he was accustomed to living above the ordinary people, he liked having status, he liked having a bit of power to throw around, he was happy to be a part of the hunting down of those who caused trouble for the empire. Thus he was pleased to be present for the stoning of Stephen. He was pleased to help take down the followers of that rebel Jesus. And although Jesus had been taken out of the picture, Stephen and others like him were still promoting that fringe group, that fringe Jewish sect called the Way. This group could not be permitted to continue. Whatever they claimed, this guy Jesus was dead. And neither Judaism or the Roman Empire were served by that rebellious minority group. Therefore, Saul confidently and happily participated in the execution of the renegade Stephen in his stoning. Later, Saul would make it his mission, his purpose, his joy, to search out and arrest those who did not worship the way he worshiped, to see that they were taken off the streets, out of their homes, out of their lives, thrown into prison at Saul's instructions, executed for the sake of Judaism, executed for the sake of Rome. But then God arrested Saul. Saul was on his way to carry out some arrest warrants when he was halted, arrested on the road to Damascus. You remember that road, don't you? That's the road where a couple disciples are walking after Jesus has been crucified, and they're talking with this guy who seems to know so much. And when they have dinner with him later and he breaks bread, they say, I know that man. It's on that road that God halts, arrests Saul. Now when Saul was arresting people, he was probably surrounding them with armed guards, but when God arrested Saul, God surrounded Saul with light and words. Saul fell to the ground, and he heard that voice speaking to him. "Why are you harassing me?" The voice identified itself as Jesus, and twice accused Saul of harassing. Now, no one could see anything, but everybody there heard that voice. Saul's fellow travelers helped him up and helped him the remainder of the way to Damascus, where he huddled without eating or drinking. He huddled in prayer, no sleeping, for 3 days, now blinded in his eyes. His plans for arresting other followers of the way, well, those plans had to be scrapped because you don't feel very powerful when you can't see where you're going. Saul liked to feel powerful when he did his work. And furthermore, he had some thinking to do. He heard a voice claim to be Jesus and accused Paul of harassing him. Jesus was supposed to be dead, and every Roman knew and believed this. We don't know where Saul's thoughts took him. We don't know if he arrived at conclusions on his own. We don't know what God had that Jesus follower named Ananias tell Saul. We suspect it wasn't terribly gentle, because God had already said, this man has to learn about suffering for me. Being arrested is not a gentle process. Whether one is arrested by officers of the law or arrested by one's own thinking. We might bluster, "You've got the wrong guy. Wait till I find out who's behind this and report them. You'll be the one in trouble." Or, "I'm not the only one. Arrest them too." We might want to be defensive. "I'm just following orders. What's wrong with my way of thinking? This is how I was taught. This is how I've always done it." Or how about this one? "I've got to look out for myself first." We might feel defeated. This is it. It's all over now. I'll never hold my head up again, if I even get out of this alive. By the time Ananias finishes talking with Saul, Saul's thinking has been realigned. Not aligned with Roman privilege, but with the heart of God, and with a new thing that God wants to do through Jesus Christ. Saul is ready to be called Paul. He's ready to live a new life with a new boss and a new purpose. He's ready to face many trials and challenges and even suffering, even the kind he formerly delivered. Persecution and suffering for the sake of his faith. He is a changed man and a willing, even devoted follower of Jesus, a participant in that minority group called the Way. Have you ever been arrested by God? Has God spoken to you out of a cloud of light and told you to stop what you are doing? Has God sent someone to speak to you and to tell you to think about things differently? Has God been calling you to a new direction, a new purpose, a new ministry? Is what you are doing, how you are acting, is it aligned with your confession of faith in the one Christ? You know, the time to resist arrest is not when it's God doing the arrest. When God is stopping us, it's time for a bit of thinking and praying and listening to what God would say. The processing after the arrest, sometimes that can take longer than expected. Saul probably thought that those 3 days were forever and ever. Sometimes we can find ourselves convicted instantly. But whether it's instant or slow, whether we come out with a new name or a new direction, if God is in on the arrest, we don't need to be afraid. And if God is in on the arrest, we can get realigned with God. If God is in on the arrest, you can count on it. God has a plan and God has a purpose. And if God is in on the arrest, God will be with us from start until the next start. Amen.